Welcome to the Sooners 360 Recruiting Podcast, a podcast for OU recruiting fans by Sooners 360. Each week we catch you up on the latest in OU recruiting news and provide opinions and evaluation on all things OU football recruiting. I'm Chris Mason, lead recruiting analyst for Sooners 360. This podcast is now sponsored by Sooners 360 on Patreon. To support this podcast, please go to patreon.com/Sooners360817 and click subscribe. It's only $2 a month. There's also a free trial option, and that's where I'm posting all of my regular recruiting content. The link will also be in the show notes, either on the podcast platform of choice or if you're watching on YouTube. Also, this podcast is now part of the Believe podcast family, every team, every topic, everywhere. And also, I'm appearing Thursday nights along with the Horns Down podcast with Chris with a K and the Hall of Fame podcast with Jason. We're talking about OU season, making weekly football, making predictions about the OU game, football predictions for the top 5 games of the week. And we're going to be doing that on Thursdays. It'll be a live stream around 8 o'clock Central Time. Also, I'm going to be doing a quick podcast with Chris with a K on Monday nights, recruiting, just a quick 30-minute recap. That's, again, a live stream that you can find on YouTube. So if you want more content, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, and that's the best way to be notified and to find the content that we're doing. So we're going to go ahead and start. It is a kind of delayed recording for a couple of days because it's a huge weekend coming up. And it is episode 137, Verbal Commits and Massive Visit Weekend. So let's start with the commitment news, and we'll start with the newest commitment, and then we'll move to the one that I haven't had a chance to quite talk about yet. So OU on Tuesday night, and that's why I delayed until recording late. This is late Wednesday. I wanted to wait because I wanted to see if OU was going to get a verbal commitment from Xavier Okafaleze, the big wide receiver from Rejoice Christian Academy in Tulsa. He's about 6'4", 190, maybe 195 pounds, probably easily could be 6'4", 210, 215 with his frame. So Xavier recently visited OU for the Illinois State game at the extended invitation of OU and Emmett Jones. After that visit, he received his official offer on Monday, and Tuesday night he verbaled it. It was pretty clear once he got the OU offer that a verbal commitment was going to happen pretty quickly. This is the offer he's been waiting on. This is where he wanted to go. This is his dream school, and he was not going to screw around and sit on an OU offer for any amount of time. So Xavier has a bunch of offers. Most notably, he has offers from OSU and TCU. And I would imagine that if he hadn't gotten this OU offer, he probably would have started to receive some higher-end offers during his senior year. He's already off to a great start with week 0, I think technically week 0 for Oklahoma high school football. Oklahoma high school football. And he's off to a great start. He had 11 catches and 236 yards with 3 touchdowns. Taking a look at his junior highlights, where he had he was over 800 yards, 9 TDs. Xavier is an explosive, big athlete. He's very, very fluid. He's not sort of mechanical. He plays both wide receiver, and he has some safety highlights too. He has multiple pick six in coverage, just jumps in front of passes, playing kind of a safety role, and then just takes the ball back for a touchdown. So I guess there's a world where you could try him at safety in college, but his ceiling at wide receiver is so high, I would doubt that OU pursues that path. Why has his name been under the radar? Well, he only started playing football his junior year, so He's playing basketball primarily. So that was his sport growing up. So from that perspective, moving to another sport, two-sport athlete, super athletic, long frame. Xavier fits a similar profile to what we're seeing with some of the other Jim Nagy offers and verbals. He has, NFL measurables at 6'4", let's say he's 210. That's an NFL wide receiver. He has a long development runway. He's raw, but he's new to playing football. He has a super high ceiling. There's a low floor, which seems to be, again, a sort of a Nagy trait. He's going to need development by the OU coaches, Emmett Jones, and the strength and conditioning team. But just like a lot of the other Nagy offers, he's a 3-star right now, but by the recruiting services. But there's a significant chance that he can outplay that ranking if OU develops him correctly. He could easily, if you were talking just his sky-high ceiling, he's more in the 4-star territory, top 200, top 250 kind of player. So, sorry about that. One other note is that his high school quarterback is 2028 OU target Tamion Compton-Nero, and Compton-Nero is already ranked in the top 100 of 247 Network's very early 2028 rankings. So he has and I think Compton-Nero first game, the week 0 game I was talking about, I think he threw for like 400 yards and 5 touchdowns, plus ran for like another touchdown. So he's very talented. He was one of the stars at OU's summer camp, and I think OU's projecting him at cornerback, although you could easily see him at wide receiver. Or if he keeps playing like this, I think you'd have to look at his film and wonder if there's a quarterback. Is there a quarterback there? So that's the pickup of Xavier. Not sure what this. So he's the second wide receiver, and he's a big wide receiver. So he's a nice compliment to Daniel Odom. Probably ends OU's pursuit or OU going after players like Jaden Petit from Florida as an example of a big player. Jordan Clay, that big wide receiver from San Antonio. He's the big wide receiver in the class. So what I think you'll see is OU will maybe focus on trying to add a third wide receiver. And we'll talk about a name that still seems to be in play for OU a little bit later. So the other verbal commitment I didn't get a chance to talk about was last week's Teron Richardson verbal to OU. Teron is part of the Nagy offer process that led to verbal commitments from Matt Nelson, Daniel Norman, and Tyler Ruxer. So OU offered him in April. OU quickly playing catch up with the local area offers like Maryland and Virginia. Penn State started to get involved. And before he made the commitment, there are other big powers like Miami and Georgia kind of floating around trying to see if they should get involved or not. Anyway, Richardson had a fantastic official visit to Norman in June, and he ended up delaying what was somewhat an anticipated verbal to Virginia Tech in June. And he pushed in July. He set a late August decision time. And during that time frame, OU basically won this recruiting battle from Virginia Tech and grabbed a lead that they didn't let go. When I look at his film, the first couple of plays from him are just kind of amazing that a guy that big is moving that fast and is that agile. He's just smashing running backs with his elite mobility and quickness. Teron plays nose guard, defensive tackle, and defensive end in his defensive highlights that he's put out. But according to a really good interview with 247, Teron's coach indicated that he plays offensive tackle for them. He plays both ways, so he's consistently on the field, playing every snap on both sides of the ball. In his highlights, he's constantly in the backfield making plays or making tackles or disrupting stuff. He had over 50 tackles last year from his defensive tackle spot. And right now, and the stats of that is that 19 of those were for a loss, which is kind of insane production. The 50 tackles from the D tackle spot is good. 19 tackles for loss is very good production. He's also an accomplished shot putter in high school, and that's a success trait that says that some of the better defensive tackles in the NFL were good shot putters in high school. So there's some carryover, and that's kind of one of those traits which I think Nagy's probably going to look for and track, especially the defensive tackle position. He's also very young. Another trait that there's starting to be some recruiting evidence that indicates that that's helping, that those guys in college maybe have more development runway because he's just 17. For example, a couple of the best OU freshmen just turned 18, like in July and August. So he's listed at 6'3" by the services. His profile says 6'5". I think he's probably about 6'4", looking at videos and social media traffic. He's probably a redshirt year in Norman, year one, which would be fine because then you can get him up to 6'4", 300 plus pounds, and with, mobility, agility, burst that you just can't teach. You can't. Todd Bates is a really good defensive tackle coach. He can handle the fundamentals and the improvement that Richardson needs to make in terms of pad level and other defensive tackle technique stuff. But so you're giving Todd elite raw materials. And as we're starting to see year over year, defensive tackles under Todd Bates just improve. Someone said Marcus Strong is a comp. That's probably not too far off, but Marcus Strong was kind of recovering from a knee injury, which I think has set back his development at OU a little bit. He's finally healthy. He had another cleanup procedure. He got into the Illinois State game and looked pretty good. So I think that's a potential ceiling. I think T-Ron's probably quicker, got a little more burst and a little more agility. So OU probably can allow him to use a redshirt year. And then I would say maybe 2027, he starts entering the defensive tackle rotation. So third defensive tackle OU has got a commitment from. OU's added 2 in August. Great job by Todd Bates and the staff to do that. I always like the fact OU's, you want to sign high school defensive tackles, and you don't want to pick that process too far down the road. They only signed one last year in Trenton Wilson. Now they got 3 in this class. I think Brian Harris is probably the best bet to not redshirt. And I think Carrington to add weight and strength. And then Richardson to add weight and strength and coaching might also redshirt. But if he comes in early and he's has a good senior year and he's starting to put stuff together and when he starts focusing only on defensive tackle, he starts picking things up quicker and quicker because not all kids are on the same development curve there. And anything's possible. So I really like this pickup. I like that 3-player class. I'm really high on Brian Harris. I think James Carrington is a 3-tech, so he's a little more. He's a very specific role, but I think certainly Todd Bates can craft him into that role. And I think Richardson has some flexibility where he could be 6'4", 315, athletic nose guard, or an athletic big 3. So definitely like where OU has headed on that defensive line class. In terms of 3 guys, I can see Todd Bates developing into SEC defensive tackles. Richardson's ceiling, again, is way high. He could easily blow up that 3-star ranking. In other defensive tackle recruiting news, I don't know that this will end up coming back OU's way, but Tavion Branch is decommitted from Rutgers. It seems like most folks think that's probably a move motivated by increased level of interest by Penn State. Penn State missed out on Richardson, so it sounds like they may be pushing for Branch. Now, back in the summer, Rutgers barely edged OU for his commitment. So, hypothetically, if he was still interested in the Sooners, would I want OU to take Branch, even though they got the recent verbals of Carrington and Richardson? And I guess I'll take it from this perspective. You always take defensive tackle depth if it's available. And with OU undersigning in 2025, three defensive tackles, 4 defensive tackles, I'd be fine with them going 4. Branch also has two-way O-line, D-line ability. Richardson probably has a little of that playing offensive tackle in high school, but I think both are defensive tackles. But Branch was being recruited as an offensive guard by a lot of folks, so he has that side of his game. He could be an offensive guard. But I think, it looks like, and we're going to get to this story in just a sec, it looks like OU's still recruiting KJ Ford, even with 3 defensive ends. So I don't know why you wouldn't continue to call Branch and see if you could add a 4th defensive tackle. Now, OU doesn't have an official visit left, so you got to get him back on campus from Pennsylvania on his own dime, and that might be tough, and that might indicate why someone like Maryland or Penn State is probably going to win out, or someplace he hasn't visited before is looking for defensive tackle help. So I don't know where that could be, but that's a distinct possibility. But I do like OU adding defensive tackle and defensive end depth after undersigning the previous year. And adding these depth numbers in 2026 could allow OU to sign smaller classes in 2027 and perhaps focus on some of the elite kids that they're after. And we'll talk about some of those names when we get to the Michigan visitor list. Obviously, we got to talk about Cooper Hackett, the 5-star offensive tackle verbaling to Texas Tech while he was on an unofficial visit to Arkansas. A little strange, a little bit out of left field. Hackett had been telling most recruiting reporters that he was going to wait until next summer. I'm not sure what's the background story on why this happened. Seems like maybe Texas Tech is sort of forcing, pressuring kids to commit. Maybe they're trying to get everything into the wire before some new rule comes in place that limits what their billionaire boosters can do. Maybe they're just trying to get as many kids locked up from a certain perspective and before a ruling comes down from one of the courts or whatever, that forces them to have to dial back the ridiculous NIL packages they seem to be spreading out to Felix Ojo and elsewhere. But what my sources are telling me is that OU is still very much involved in this recruiting battle. We'll talk about it in a minute, but he should be back on OU's campus for the Michigan game. And I think OU will have every chance to flip this commitment and make down the road a good season on the field this year. As with old big-time recruits will help. And I think OU has a chance to flip this process. Just stay in there, continue to work, craft an effective message of development and NIL that I don't think Texas Tech can really match from a development standpoint. SEC football, play against the best defensive ends, play against the best competition. And I think that message could work. Distance, I think, will also at some point can maybe help OU as well. Fort Gibson to Lubbock is a long car ride. Norman's much easier, much more effective. It's much simpler from a logistics standpoint. So we'll see what happens there. But I think this is more a case that Texas Tech has just basically pressured him for a verbal, and he doesn't didn't know quite how to say no, and just sort of committed to them to get them off his back to a certain speed, uh, from a certain perspective. But I do think Texas Tech is kind of. Don't be surprised if you see several more verbals, big time kids to Texas Tech, because I do think they're just trying to rush and get as much momentum as they can before maybe they get before they get some counter news that says you can't keep doing this. So we just talked about Xavier. Make sure I get his name right here. Okafaleze committing, and that timeline was OU seems to be trying to use that timeline again with another player. So offensive tackle David McMorris from Norman North, 6'5", 265, was committed to Minnesota. He's now decommitted. OU has formally invited him to the Michigan game. I think they will formally offer him while he's on campus. So the only question is, will McMorris take the OU offer as quickly as Xavier did? He has other offers. He's an offensive tackle with a serious ceiling, so that there are certainly other programs out there. So we'll just see how that bears out. But McMorris, again, it sort of fits this Nagy profile of the 3 stars that he likes, or the guys he thinks are under-recruited, undervalued. And McMorris is 6'5", 265. He's got a frame to easily be 300 plus. He has elite mobility. You could easily picture him as a left tackle. Like Xavier, he'll need development time. You need to strengthen conditioning team to add weight and size and bulk and strength. And you'll need Bill to coach him up on being an offensive tackle. But if OU wants to make this work and get his verbal commitment, I like the tackle duo of Deacon Schmidt and Daniel McMorris. That's a right tackle and Schmidt, left tackle and McMorris, and you got Noah Best, center guard in the middle. OU needs one more interior offensive lineman, I think, in this class. Signed 4 players, 2 inside, 2 tackles. But it would make a lot of sense, and I think it would be a good tackle pair based upon it's not a great year in state other than McMorris. It's not a great year in Texas for offensive tackles. There's a lot of interior players, but Ojo's the only real sort of superstar tackle. So keep an eye on this situation. Could be moving quickly that OU could add an offensive tackle to their recruiting class and a key 3rd offensive lineman. OU still looks like they could. Both these guys, I think, should be in for the Auburn game. Braden Allen, the wide receiver from Louisiana, looks like OU still trying to recruit him, flip him. I believe the Xavier's commitment doesn't change that fact. OU would like 3 wide receivers. And Jacob Curry, the linebacker from Miami. Miami's trying to get him. They brought him to the Notre Dame game. He's supposed to come in for the Auburn game. He's decommitted from Northwestern. He's 6'1", 205, 208, 210 range. Would be a will linebacker along with Ja'Cory Smith. Then you have Jandro, who would be your Mike. So that would be a good linebacker group right there. In terms of Illinois State visitors that have been flying a little bit under the radar, Daniel Yebet from UConn visited. He's 6'2", like 175 pounds, maybe a cornerback, maybe a wide receiver. They had a week 0 game where he scored 3 touchdowns in the first half. So he seems like a really good athlete. So that's a name to maybe track. And then a 2029 name to track from South Oak Cliff is Sakura Cooper. He is 6'2", 180 pounds, or at least that's what he reports. That's the range. And he had 6 catches for 191 yards, 5 TDs with 1 rushing TD. So I don't know who they played, but that's some pretty awesome stats right there. So the Michigan visitors, the list is just absurd. If between the lists you see published, and Colin Kennedy on 247 has a expansive list, and if every name he lists shows up in Norman, it's an amazing visit weekend. Some names have been going public and have indicated who they are. Got a couple of new big names this week. So I'm just going to give you 12 names I think are relevant for OU and OU has a real shot at, or that I think are just elite kids coming in. Also, I just mentioned KJ Ford is probably visiting. Joshua Christian from Sooner Scoop has been reporting that. And Daniel McMorris, who I just talked about, should be on campus as well. So those are the 2026 names who are sort of in play Michigan week. And obviously, OU has a bunch of verbal commitments coming in. 15, 16 of their 14 guys from their current commit list. I think the only names that probably are having a hard time getting their scheduling together are Daniel Odom from California. Again, he's playing late Friday night Central Time, so getting to Norman might be tough. And maybe couple of the Florida kids might have a hard time. Not sure about T-Ron Richardson. He just committed. I'm not sure if he's been able to arrange transport to Norman. So here are 12 2027 names, because that's really the focus here. The 2027 list is going to be at least 20 names deep. Lots of offers, 4 stars, some 5 stars. Lots of guys OU evaluates much higher, who are 3 stars right now, but OU has much higher on their list. But these are 12 important names to mention, or names of interest, I think. So the first name is 5-star number 1 linebacker Cooper Witten, getting him back on campus. Great sign. OU's heavily connected with him. Obviously, Tennessee will be a factor, but OU is firmly connected with Cooper, trying to make and trying to close on that recruiting. I'm sorry, just trying to maintain their presence and maintain sort of their presence in the top 5. Now, Peyton Houston should be on campus. Have to think he liked John Mateer's debut last week, throwing for 392 yards. Houston is probably and if he continues to be doesn't make a commitment in September, he may end up being the highest ranked quarterback that's on the open market at some point, because the quarterbacks are falling left and right. Looks like an OU Southern Cal battle. Good game by Mateer. Clear sign that OU's passing game is back. Couldn't hurt. Could you see Peyton making a decision for OU if OU has a great day? I don't think it's beyond the realm of possibility. We could see him after this OU weekend set a decision date. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Then a kind of a surprise is the number 1 cornerback in the country, Joshua Dobson from South Carolina, is coming on his own dime to visit. He's a 5-star, top 10 player in the nation. Then a guy that I've talked about a bunch on this podcast, Montre Jackson, will be back on campus. This is like his 6th visit. He had back-to-back great showings at OU summer camp events, and he's going to be back on campus. I don't see him pulling the trigger, but he's obviously a big cornerback target for OU. There's some conflicting reports on this, but I think Jalen Brewster should be on campus this weekend. That's a high probable. Then one that's not, because he's been in multiple interviews talking about it. Defensive tackle Elijah Harmon from California, 6'3", 300 pounds. Super athletic defensive tackle, could also be a super athletic nose guard for OU. He's on campus. Bates is making a real big push with him. Then OU's number 1 target in terms of it is as an interior offensive lineman, Caden Penny from the Tulsa area, should be on campus. He's a top 50 player in the nation right now. As I mentioned, Cooper Hackett should be back on campus. And then also at offensive tackle, you've got Ismail Kamara from the Dallas area, 6'6", 320, racking up offers. He's a massive Trent Williams fan, according to social media. He's dropped from like 385 down to 320. Looks in fantastic shape. Could be poised for a big junior year and vaulting him up the rankings. He's already in the top 100, but he could move up even higher. Then we have former OU commit Zane Rowe from Denton will be back on campus. He's off to a good start to his junior year. 6'5", 255. Again, he and Miguel Chavis just clicked. So if OU's doing well, OU will be in that battle because, I can see them being in Zane Rowe's final three or, top four when he gets ready to make a decision. Then probably the number one safety on the board. He's in the top 150 of the ranking services. I think he's better than that. His name's Eli Johnson from San Antonio. He's 6'3", 200 pounds. Fantastic athlete. Ohio State, Texas, and OU are probably his top three. I think that shows you how good a prospect he is. Those programs aren't, Coach Hall, Brandon Hall has, established himself as a safety recruiter. Obviously, Ohio State's has Caleb Downs now. And, Texas has had good secondary play under their current defensive staff. This guy is not ranked, but it's a matter of time. I've talked about him before on my Patreon and mentioned his name. His name is, if you're not following me on Twitter, follow me on Twitter. Noah Raines is a linebacker from Niceville, Florida. He's 6'3", 230. He's a Mike linebacker, blows people up. Physical as all get out. Just an ideal fit for Brent's defense. This should be his first visit to Norman. OU offered him. He's starting to build up national offers. Next time the rankings come out, he's going to be a 4-star. I would be stunned if he's not. And then maybe one of the more interesting stories is North Dakota defensive tackle Luke Starshavik is coming down. He's 6'5", 260. Could he stay at defensive end? Sure. Could he move to defensive tackle? Yes, he has the frame to do it. Can he play low enough at the right pad level to make that move? I don't know, but he's certainly got a frame where he could carry 285, 290, and be sort of an elite 3-tech pass rusher, or just stay at defensive end that big and just be a power defensive end. So that's 12 names. I could have added 12 more. That's how many kids are visiting that have legit OU offers, that are OU takes right now. So it'll be a fascinating weekend to see who shows up, how OU plays, and what the reports are. Should be lots of information coming out of this weekend in terms of guys that love the visit, and I'm going to be keeping track of social media, as many confirmed visitors as I can. Finally, 2028 is also going to be represented. Gage Weddle, 5-star safety. He is the son of Eric Weddle, who is basically a Hall of Fame safety for the Chargers and the Baltimore Ravens. Makai Rhodes is going to be on campus again. He's a top 100 running back, teammate of Cortland Guillory. Then Kellen Hall from Louisville, from Kentucky, 5-star defensive tackle, top 10 player in the nation, might be the top defensive tackle for 2028. He had a massive showing at OU summer camp, super impressive. He's going to be back on campus on his own dime. That's a great sign. And hopefully he enjoys watching OU's defensive tackles. Hopefully have a big day against Michigan. And then, as I mentioned before, Tulsa prospect Camion Compton-Nero, top 100 in the nation right now on 247's 28 rankings. He's a cornerback wide receiver, great athlete, going to have a huge ceiling. Could be the top player in the state for 2028. That's a That's a strong possibility. OU's also made some more offers. They made a really interesting offer for 2027. They offered Seneca Driver. He is a tight end from Kentucky, 6'7", 230. His tight end film's pretty elite looking. Not sure his interest level in OU, but he's definitely someone they should keep calling until he says no. Then you have Quentin Burrell, a wide receiver from Mount Carmel, Illinois, state champions. He's a big receiver, 6'3", 195. Then you have Dante Tyson from Arizona, 6'3", 185 pounds. Also looks really, really good film. So a couple of more 27 wide receiver offers. And then OU's made a 2029 offer. I know that seems kind of crazy because the kid hasn't played varsity football yet. Was in middle school last year. He's in the Duncanville area. His name's Jarius Ingram. He's 6'4", 180 pounds, and if OU's offering him this early, he must be damn good. So that's all the current news that we have. I'll be recording again on Wednesday, but like I said, keep an eye out. Just subscribe to my YouTube channel. Keep an eye out on Twitter. I'll be doing a live stream on Monday to quickly talk about recruiting news with Chris with a K. We're going to do a quick Q&A session. If you want to ask me questions, join that live stream. Put in the comments, ask your recruiting questions. You can get a Q&A session with me. So appreciate everyone listening. If you subscribe to this on a podcast channel, please leave a rating. If you're at YouTube, please give us a thumbs up. And finally, again, please visit patreon.com/Sooners360817 to subscribe for more recruiting content on Sooners 360 on Patreon. And that podcast keeps this podcast free. So please consider giving us a chance. Thanks, everyone. And it's a massive weekend, as you can tell. The on-the-field implications are massive. The recruiting implications somehow could be even greater with an OU win. So no pressure there, Brent. Just we need a win in the worst way. So I will be back next week. Thanks.